Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professor. This is the Quarterback Whisperer Show. We're about to dive into three signal callers. But before we do that, Dom, this is a week where the Jets won and the Bills lost. And the likelihood of those two things happening the same week isn't that's not going to happen very often.
And they didn't play each other. How about that? I know. It's very, very peculiar week. So,
yep. And Daniel, what's the good word in college football for you right now?
Man, it's mayhem. We don't know who's going to get G5 representation there in the playoff. That's up in the air once again. ACC up in the air once again. And JKS got to come to my hometown in Louisville, Kentucky, and absolutely put on a show. That was my three biggest takeaways. You know, Ohio State and Indiana looks like they're just at the top of the mountain. And A&M is looking to trying to solidify themselves as a real contender. I think that's a great discussion right now in the college football world. But other than that, ready to, see how this all shakes out and ready to talk some quarterbacks.
And Hank, welcome back from laryngitis. What's going on in your football world, Hank? I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks.
Nothing good. Nothing good is happening after Washington went on the road and lost to Wisconsin. And probably the most disheartening performance I've ever watched. Just all around terrible. But in good news, Ty Simpson, for me, is now solidified QB1 as a sneak peek. But I think he solidified it this week against LSU with a big-time performance.
Well, here's the three quarterbacks we are going to discuss today. Joey Aguilar from Tennessee, Cade Klubnik from Clemson, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. And Daniel, you're going to kick off Joey Aguilar from Tennessee. What do you like about the Tennessee signal caller?
Man, this is a guy who's definitely been growing on me this season. Everyone wanted to see how he was going to perform, transferred over from App State, threw for over 3,000 yards each year at App State. So everyone was just kind of really just curious what he's going to do on a bigger stage. I think he's proven he can throw with the big dogs and a lot of intangibles that I think that are stuff to grow on and some GMs would love to get their hands on because we've seen a lot of these guys that are highly touted just not really living up to the hype. But Joey Aguilar is a guy I think didn't have as much hype coming in, rightfully so. But I think he's earned some hype. He does a lot of things that's, just goes overlooked in a good quarterback, right? He's got good zip on the ball. His intermediate throwing is really good. It's underrated. The touch he throws on the ball in the middle of the ball or middle of the field, it's great. I think he doesn't set up his wide receivers for failure. No hospital balls from Joey Aguilar usually, but he does have some good receiving core. I mean, he's got SEC talent. We wanted to see how he was going to really rise up to the occasion. Does he belong? I think he more than belongs. I think he's got a spot in this league. Maybe he's a day 3 guy or what have you, but I do see a guy he could fill in with Joey Aguilar. But I'm looking here just in my notes and my breakdown. I mean, 8 picks right now. You want to maybe him to clean that up, but with him being the first year at a SEC level, I would just like to see him just get the little things. So the only thing that I really have as a big knock is his ball placement on the outside, so really close to the sideline. So if he's running a curl route, comeback route, those are the few things he could really improve on with his ball placement. But the zip on the ball is something you can't teach. That's something that really separates the Jimmies from the Joes, the college quarterbacks from the NFL quarterbacks, and he's got it. So he's really got that zip, and that's something that the Mendozas have, that the Ty Simpsons have. But he's got it. He falls back a little bit. And just off, we would like to see some more film on. I mean, the film we have right now is great, but I think the rest of the season is really going to make or break his film and to see where he lands, especially before we get into compression gear season and pro day and combine. When I think he's only going to go up from there, which is we've seen guys go down. It's hard to go down from there once you get in compression gear, but especially as a quarterback, I think he's a riser. But I'm really curious, 6'3", 225, is that what everyone else has? That's what I have. It's what you have, Jim, so that looks like it's pretty solid on measurables, which I love. But Quinn Ewers is a guy who I kind of resemble him a little bit. I don't know if I'm crazy for that, but I think I kind of looked at it from a flaw standpoint as opposed to a strength. I think they have the same flaws. I think they kind of fall back a little bit. They kind of get their feet in the ground, but not as much as you'd like. Not as much as a guy we touched on last week as a Darian Mensah who digs his feet right into the ground as soon as he gets done being mobile and makes that delivered ball with anticipation. Joey Aguilar's got that in his capabilities. I would just like to see it on a more consistent basis.
Hank, where are you on Aguilar?
Yeah, Aguilar, he's a fun day 3 UDFA kind of guy. I mean, he has the size, he has the arm, he has the experience to be a decent backup for a while. It's just he's been inconsistent-ish in the SEC, I think, this year. I mean, we all saw the first half against Georgia where he came out looking like he was about to be a day 2 pick, but then the second half and he looked like a completely different quarterback. So there's still a road for Joey Aguilar, and it's going to be a long road if he's ever going to be a starter in the NFL. I think he could very soundly, though, be a backup for many NFL teams, be that QB2, QB3. He immediately will bring in a leader, a veteran kind of mentality with his age because he's 24, 25. But the thing that really just does alarm me is that his best games are coming up against, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky, while his worst really has been Alabama and Oklahoma. When he's asked to face these top guys, it's not like he's been terrible. It's just he hasn't really stood out unless it's the first half at Georgia. So Aguilar for me is just a fun day 3 level guy.
Okay. And Dom, you said you haven't had a chance really to watch him yet.
No, I mean, I've watched broadcasts of Tennessee. I haven't really dove into Aguilar's film yet. But listen, I think for the most part, I'll say a couple things. One, and maybe this is me, maybe this is bias, but I always take anything that's coming out of Tennessee with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? The offense is kind of wonky. I don't know if it translates well at the skill positions, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers especially, to the NFL game. I don't know how pro-ready they make it. I mean, kudos to them for being able to outplay and out-scheme looks and receivers open at the college game, but that doesn't always translate to pro-style offense. So I'll say that. He has the build. He has the size. He has a live arm. He's also going to be 25 come April. So I just don't know. Like, there's just not many. Tyler Shuck, I think, was kind of the anomaly of guys that you see actually, where vested, good capital is vested in a guy like that. The other older prospects of recent years that I could think of, Sam Hartman, UDFA. There was another guy who was the kid? Why am I drawing a blank? Mendoza replacement in Indiana last year.
Oh, Curtis Rourke.
Curtis Rourke, another 25-year-old prospect, UDFA. And granted, he got hurt, so maybe he would have been a day 3 guy or before the late in the 7th round, so on and so forth. So I just don't know. I'm looking forward to really, really getting an eval and getting a write-up done on him to see if what I see at the broadcast level is really telling the whole story on him. But I think the odds are stacked against him that he'll see anything likely before a practice squad.
Okay. So I heard backup from all 3 of you.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard better things about Aguilar than I heard said about Luke Altmaier, who we also said was a backup on the first episode that we did. Compare and contrast Aguilar with Altmaier, Hank.
Now I've watched Altmaier in person plenty of times, so I've seen the eye test is real with him and within me. So the big thing for me is, number one, the arm. Aguilar definitely has a tier ahead in terms of arm talent, arm strength. Aguilar has size. Aguilar, if you want to talk in terms of backup, you could make the argument that he's 20, he's going to be 25. That's a leader from day 1. That's a guy who can bring experience. He's been around, FCS to App State to Tennessee. He knows how to adapt to a system. It just feels like it's more of a prototypical backup than Luke Altmaier, who has been a starter at Illinois now for 3 seasons, from Ole Miss, of course. And he's been fine. He doesn't turn the ball over, game manager. Same thing with Aguilar. Aguilar just has like 1 or 2 better traits that teams are going to like more, in my opinion.
Daniel, how about you? Aguilar versus Altmaier.
I think they do have a lot of similarities, definitely at a prospect level. But the only thing that really stands out, the difference, is that lively arm. It's just that zip off the ball. I just think Aguilar has that. I do like Altmaier, but I do like him just as I don't know. I think a backup's a backup, but they're really not all the same. I mean, not every backup's the same. I do think Joey Aguilar is going to be a backup that if he did have to get thrown in there, you wouldn't, be in disarray. I don't think you would be in uproar about. I think if a team found themselves Joey Aguilar being a fill-in quarterback for a week or two, I think that fan base, thought they may be able to get some wins. Honestly, Altmaier, I just think lacks the zip off the ball. It's the only thing that's the big difference between these two guys with me, because I do think both are pretty mobile within the pocket. I do think they feel pressure really good, at a pro level, but it sucks because we're kind of getting numb to that, like we said, that backup role, that backup tag, but it's not a knock. It's not a knock. I mean, if there's a spot for you in the league as a guy with at a quarterback position, I mean, you're 1% of the 1%ers.
Yeah, and I'll tie into that as well. I don't even know if they're backup material, and I don't say that in a disrespectful manner. I'm just speaking in the reality is that look at the landscape of the NFL, right? And I'll use the the litmus test of I talked about him before. I talked about Sam Hartman, right? Older quarterbacks that are kind of one-dimensional, that don't have extreme physical attributes or athleticism or an attribute that can kind of hold them above and beyond, usually don't end up making rosters, right? Brady Cook from Missouri, I thought last year was a really good quarterback. I liked him a lot. He's a practice squad guy. You know what I mean? That's where the NFL, the backups, they recycle these guys, team after team, year after year. If you have some experience in the league, you're more than likely to get one of the 64 quarterback slots in the NFL between starters and backups. So, to get at 25 to expect Joey Aguilar to be in the top 64 in the league, I don't see it personally. Like I said, I just think that there's guys at his, that do things as good or maybe better that don't have those chances. So, and they played in pro style offenses and so on and so forth. So I think when we say backup quarterback, that's probably being a little bit kind. Like there's a good chance that, quarterbacks, 8 through 20 that we end up talking about over the next couple months don't, ever, make an NFL roster, or at least don't start on an NFL roster. It might be on an NFL practice squad or so on and so forth. So I just think that's the reality that we're dealing with. The position's one that coaches are going to go and lean on guys that they're familiar with and experience. And like I said, and that's why the same backups seem to be just, rotating around the league, team after team, location after location.
Yeah. So I believe the average number of quarterbacks taken is 12 plus or minus. Does anybody have a reason to dispute 12 quarterbacks on average get drafted?
Nope.
I don't have a reason to dispute that now.
Okay. Do we think Aguilar is going to be a top 12 quarterback in this class?
No. I do not.
Probably not.
Dan? Okay,
I think he is. I think he's right there at 11, 12, maybe at 10. I think, like we've seen Cam Miller get drafted, he didn't make the roster, right? I mean, just because you get drafted, how many of those 12 are we going to see on the roster? Practice squad.
Right.
We'll see what teams keep 3 and what not. But yeah, I do think he is draftable in this year's draft. Last year's, no. Next year's, definitely not. This year's, I do think so.
Yeah, I think this could also. There's a lot of guys that could go back to school in this class, and that could help Aguilar. Like half of your top 10 could go back to school probably. So it's all going to come. It's closer to April. We'll know if he's going to get drafted or not. I'm sure a team could sneak it in there. They would have to really like him as a person and as a leader to sneak him in at day 3.
Yeah, but what are you doing with a 25-year-old quarterback? A 25-year-old quarterback that you're not investing high capital on? Like, there's not – how much more development is there going to be at that stage?
I don't even think it's from, like, a developmental standpoint. You're just taking him, like, strictly as, like, a leader, is sort of a guy who you can adapt to systems. Because at the end of the day, 90% of day 3 picks, round 6, round 7 especially, is just drafted on, are you a good person? Are you a leader? Are you coachable? Do you understand football? Are you going to improve team morale? It's not really, oh, let's go out and get BPA. There's plenty of guys every year who I have maybe top 150 on my board, top 200, that end up going undrafted, and then they get signed after just because maybe they have some character things. Maybe they didn't do as well in interviews. So if Aguilar does well in interviews, it's not really about, will this guy throw the football better? It's more about, when you get to day 3, is he just a better guy? Is he a better leader? Is he a better mentor? What can he bring to this team just as a person?
Fair enough.
Yep. Okay. So the next quarterback is Cade Klubnik from Clemson. Hank, what do you think about Klubnik?
Yeah, so the number one thing that I think is very important about Cade Klubnik this season is that I personally, so much blame is getting thrown onto Klubnik, thrown onto Peter Woods, thrown onto TJ Parker. You know, these top guys for Clemson that it was expected to be a national championship contender. A lot of people's national championship picks. Now they're trying to get into a bowl game. A lot of the blame should not be on Klubnik. Watching his film, in my opinion, he has looked fine. He hasn't looked QB1. He hasn't looked QB2, QB3, but he has looked fine. He is definitely being overhated so far, especially during the scouting process. This is a guy, I have 6'1", 204, 6'2", 210 isn't that far off. You know, senior Clemson, sneakily good athlete, has a good release, can use multiple arm angles. I think that he's smart with the football. He knows when to check the ball down. I think he's shockingly shifty in the open field, and I think his best work can come out of play action. Just some of the negatives, middling arm strength, I would say. He doesn't have a bad arm. But he's closer to a Ty Simpson arm than, having the worst arm in the league. And Ty Simpson's, I'd say, is slightly above average. But Cade Klubnik, it's really just pretty average. And then the number one thing, though, is just his mechanics under pressure just disappear. And that's the one thing that really a lot of people saw over summer scouting was like, if he can fix this, this is your QB1. It still hasn't been fixed. He's still making off-platform throws in the face of a blitz. He just freaks out too easily. And from a guy who was in QB1 conversations, I know like he was Anthony Russo's QB1 going into the year. You just can't have that from. I think that he's lost a bit on his deep balls in 2025, velocity and accuracy. I think that his vision from the pocket is affected just due to his height. And I think that also, same thing with Aguilar, working the sidelines. He could be better. But at the same time, I'm nitpicking because this is a guy who was supposed to be a top 5 pick coming in this year. So to see him fall like this, dealing with an injury now as well, it's just not what you want to see from a guy who could have been the number 1 overall pick, who could have been a franchise-changing guy. He could be going to the Saints, could have been going to the Jets, could have been going anywhere to fix their team. But now you're looking at him as like, okay, I have a round 3 grade on him because I really don't think that a lot of these issues at Clemson aren't really his fault. But I mean, you watch the LSU game and it's hard to like him. So I want him to get drafted day 2. I doubt he'll go day 2 because not a lot of quarterbacks go day 2. It's either you're a first round pick or you're more than likely day 3. But I think this is a guy you'll see round 3, round 4 easily in the draft.
Dom, what about you on Klubnik?
Yeah, I like everything that Hank said because I have a lot of the same feelings. I've got a late round 3, early round 4 grade on him. He too was hands down my favorite quarterback coming out of last season and into the summer. You thought there were some things that you watch, and this is how everyone's process is different in terms of what we do. And when I'm looking at a guy from last year to this year, like I'm eyeing them up and I'm sizing them up, not only what they do good, but really where their faults are, right? And you say, do you see significant improvement in A, B, or C? That's what they needed to work on. That's what my note said they needed to work on last year. And have they done it? Or can they do it? Or, do you see that improvement? And unfortunately, with Klubnik, you haven't, and we're going to get into Nussmeier as well, where I think that there's some just like stagnant movement in their, in the way that they play and their progress as, quarterbacks. But, the biggest thing, Klubnik, the two things that I think are really going to hurt him is, Hank hit on one of them. Like under pressure, it just seems like everything kind of crumbles. You know what I mean? Being a Jets fan, I watched that, for 3+ years with Zach Wilson, right? And I'm not comparing Cade Klubnik to Zach Wilson, but you watched him kind of look like a deer in headlights and not really understanding or being able to adjust and process, what's happening pre-snap and adjusting post-snap. And in the heat of the moment, with pressure in his face, things just kind of fall apart. Starting, with his mechanics, and and up to his head, man. He also, although he has a good arm. I'd say he's got an NFL arm. You wish that you can kind of take some RPMs or take some of the velo off of it sometimes. Like it seems like everything is thrown at full velocity as hard as he can, no matter if it's mesh concept crossing route or if it's a 4-yard stick by the tight end. Everything comes in one foul swoop. It's just not a very catchable ball. So and it's funny because those two things I don't think he's improved on. Right, from last year to this year. Now, is his lack of ability to change the speed and stuff like that of his on his throws the reason why he goes from my quarterback 1 to probably like I said quarterback 8 or 9? No, probably not. There's just been a lot of growth in some of the other guys that didn't have up there. And there's you can't the numbers don't lie. From when Cade Klubnik came into Clemson, where he threw for 3,600 yards and so on and so forth, it seems like there's been a kind of a ceiling hit or a lack thereof of further development. And like Hank said, I don't think it's all the problems are his. His film's not terrible. Just that, he failed to take the next step from last year to this year. And that's what you really needed to see, especially for a guy who's, 6'2", maybe 6'2", maybe 200 pounds, 205 pounds, so on and so forth. Like he's a little bit frail. He's got some good athleticism, and he's got a good arm. He's missing a lot of those wow moments that I think takes him out of the first round, the first round equation, especially in a draft class like this, where there might not be many first round quarterbacks taken. I think there's an opportunity, and I think the sum of all the parts this year for Klubnik just kind of missed the mark.
Daniel, where are you on Klubnik right now?
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, just kind of the same guy we saw last year. Didn't take that step, unfortunately. So when if you're staying the same and everyone else is rising, it's the same as getting worse. So I think the frame things might come to be an issue or something they're going to nitpick at, even though quarterback is something they're going to nitpick no matter what. But yeah, I like Klubnik at times, but man, I never had him too high. I had Mendoza coming into the season above him, but hey, we're going to mention the B word again, a backup. Is this guy a solidified backup in the league? I think he is. I think he just got to improve. I think he's overcompensating when he's, trying to throw a fastball when it shouldn't be, because he really can't throw the real fastball when he needs to. He can't hit it. His deep ball is a real big question for me. Look at every throw Klubnik makes and ask yourself, can Sawyer Robertson make this throw? And I think that's a yes. There's not too many throws that he can make that Sawyer can't. And so I think that's going to be a big thing. It's like, okay, what can you do that no one else can? And then if you can do the same things everyone else can, what have you won that something that no one else has won? And those two boxes he really hasn't been able to check. A national championship could have definitely helped that this year. That went far left real quick. But it's an uphill battle. We're going to talk about him and Nussmeier. They were the two studs coming in, as well as Drew Aller, and they didn't take that next step. It doesn't mean they're not going to put on an NFL jersey, but I just think that whole starter stigma, that tag, has went out the window. We'll see. I don't know if anyone's going to really want to say, all right, I can develop this guy or I can fix him, because he has playing for a big program, you're always going to get drafted a little bit higher. That's a big reason why Aguilar we're going to see probably maybe get drafted because he went to Tennessee, an SEC program. If he put the same film at App State or a different lower P4, we probably wouldn't be talking about him as much. So who you play for does matter to these GMs, but in that same breath, who you play for with the headset as well is a big thing. This is a Dabo Swinney guy. I think he might get a shot just because some GMs don't believe in Dabo. Who has Dabo really developed? I feel like everyone that's came into Dabo has already been pretty solid and pretty highly touted. Because I watched him take some garbage snaps his freshman year at Clemson. I was at a Clemson game, and even then, he showed those flashes. But how many steps further has he taken since that point? I think that's the question everyone's going to be asking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So with Klubnik, do we see an NFL starter, Dom?
I do. I think he's got the chops to do it. I think the bones of I think the foundation is there. I think his athleticism, his athletic ability alone will help him in that sense. But we're talking, this is not a guy you want to kind of draft and hand the keys off to. This is a guy who probably sits and learns and then ends up starter de facto because the true starter on the team gets hurt and he's given an opportunity to play and he ends up helping them win a couple games, so on and so forth. Again, not comparing their games, but think of a situation like it's a bad example because he lost his job this year to Geno Smith, but Aiden O'Connell, right? When he was drafted, no one thought, that he'd have a chance to start. I could see Klubnik having I could see Klubnik having a, career like that or Gardner Minshew, where, he might bounce around a little bit. He might be a spot starter. He might be, he might get a chance and hold over a spot for the true starter while he's fighting an injury or something like that. And then he might end up being a bridge kind of quarterback. I think he's got that skill set and those capabilities in him. But again, this is a young man at whatever he is, 22 years old in April. He's still going to need some time.
Hank, how about you? Do you see an NFL starter in Klubnik's future?
Hesitantly, yes. It's going to have to take a big mental leap.
Yeah.
A big mental leap. And it's not a mental leap you see really often. In the summer, I was lower on Klubnik. I had the same round 3 grade. It's just the IQ is something that you figure by his senior year at Clemson, he would have more figured out than he does right now. And when it comes down to it, if my quarterback can't handle the pressure of college, can't handle the blitz, can't handle disguises, can't handle when there's a 5-on-5 coming his way, and then all of a sudden you ask him to do it in the NFL when the game is 2 times faster, it usually doesn't translate well. And it's that IQ aspect of the game that I'm really worried about Klubnik for, because besides that, he has everything. He has the mobility, he has the arm, he has the accuracy, he has everything. It's just the mental leap needed for him is just, I think, going to be too big for him. And I think he's going to end up being a backup, which of course the B word. But for me, if he can take a smaller leap forward in his IQ, this could be a bridge guy. We're seeing it with Justin Fields right now. Justin Fields has notoriously been a second or two behind on every play. His clock is too slow. Maybe Cade Klubnik's your bridge guy where, hey, if he faces pressure, he freaks out. In my opinion, and this is a bad comp for how he's playing this year, but I just see a less athletic Daniel Jones on the Giants where he can't really push the ball downfield. He's freaking out under pressure. He can use his legs if he has to. And if you ask him to hit the easy underneath routes, he can, but it's just the IQ. But of course, Daniel Jones has now become one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL and Indy. But, there's still time for him to regress or even become an MVP. Who knows? But that's probably my comp at the end of the day for Klubnik is just New York Giants, Daniel Jones.
Okay.
Fair.
What type of offensive scheme do we think suits Klubnik the best, Daniel?
Get the ball out and get it quick out. I think that's what we want. If we're going to have a quarterback who has a mental lapse, that means we need to let him think as less as possible. And you're going to see a lot of you're going to see a lot of that happen around college with younger quarterbacks. 1-2 and go, or just one read and go. You're not going to be able to do that in the NFL, but we're going to still try to make a system around him that suits him best and gets him to think less and just use that natural arm ability. Because I think just because you fell from up here to down here doesn't mean you still could not be a starter. I think that's a taste that everyone's going to have to get out of their mouth is, okay, this guy's not the Heisman everyone we thought, was going to be, national title contender. But it doesn't mean if you're not those two things that you can't start some games in the NFL or get some wins. So I will give him some leeway at that. The rap sheet's the rap sheet. You want to say, okay, you want to look at all the factors here. What is something I could give you some lenience on? Coaching change, transfer portal. He's had neither. So, but scheme, West Coast, we always want to see maybe a West Coast system. Let's get the ball out. But I do think a lot of these teams that are going to be starting younger quarterbacks, they want to get their running backs involved into the passing game. And I think he should be in a system. I mean, look at the Saints. Look at Tyler Shough. I mean, he did throw a pretty good game here in his first start. I could see a system just like that helping out Klubnik to where it's like, all right, we just need you to stay steady, Eddie. Let's stay away from 3rd and 16s. But if we are in there, let's not try to go and throw it at the pylon because, I think that's just not his game. He's more of a guy who can be deceptive and really achieve it in that way. But I think of a West Coast system. What do you guys think?
Yeah, two teams that just make the most sense, in my opinion, are Denver and Tampa Bay. Both teams preach getting the ball out. I think Denver is like the number one spot. Yeah. San Fran as well. You always, when you want a guy who has to make no reads, just dump the ball off, Denver and San Francisco. I would really like to see him in Denver. I think that if Bo Nix continues playing the way he has this year, there could be a way for him to not be the starter in maybe a year or two. So get Klubnik in there, get some young competition. Maybe that'll help Bo Nix play a bit better. But I think that the Denver Broncos system would be near perfect for Cade Klubnik in the NFL.
Dom, any additional thoughts?
No, and I didn't really think about the Denver offense being such a good fit for a lot of guys because you got to deal with Sean Payton, and he seems to just be like an asshole to his quarterbacks. But I digress. Yeah, any of those, I think any of those, West Coast principle base where they thrive on timing and rhythm and stuff like that. I think those will help a lot. I think those will help a lot of these quarterbacks, especially ones who don't have the maybe the deep ball penchant or the penchant for the deep ball or the arm strength to kind of push and press everything vertical. So yeah, any of those West Coast offenses, in this day and age will do good.
If the deep ball is a problem, he could go to Buffalo because we don't know how to throw beyond 10 yards down.
Well, don't worry. You just signed Mecole Hardman today, so that'll all change.
I saw that.
It's an awful.
Former Packer, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Former Jet, former Packer, former Chief. Yes.
Garrett Nussmeier from LSU.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about Nussmeier?
Yeah, I you know what? I'm gonna probably be one that's a little bit higher on him than most. I know everyone watched the game this weekend where he got pulled and yanked, and he just wasn't good, and call it like it is. But I think the sum of all the parts, you have a quarterback that's that I think can play in the league. You talk about, forget about the fact that, he sat behind Jaden Daniels. He sat and learned behind these quarterbacks. He's a little bit older, a prospect at 24. I think that has something, that shows a little bit of grit and maturity in itself. Being the son of a former quarterback, being the son of an offensive coordinator, that, Thanksgiving dinners are probably different in the Nussmeier house than they are, with the four of us. I'm sure he's, been taught how to, play on the whiteboard and read defenses and adjust to robbers and creeper pressures and stuff like that. that stuff goes a long way, and I think it shows in his game because I think like the processing of what's going on and his football IQ are super super advanced. I love how he throws the ball. I think he's got, although he's not the strongest arm in the class, this is very typical for this class. Like, outside of Aguilar and Sellers, I don't know if there's any like true howitzers. The whole thing is like they got a good arm, they got an NFL arm, but it's not nothing like spectacular. And I think Nussmeier falls into that realm. But the stuff that he does, like the anticipatory throws and the way he layers the ball, and leads his receivers, I think all that stuff is really really high level. Again, another smaller guy, not the most athletic, not going to really be a dual threat guy. He's going to beat you with his smarts. He's going to beat you with his arm talent. Maybe not his arm strength, but his arm talent. And all that stuff is really good. Like now, and I will preface this by saying, and I don't know if anyone has better intel on it than me. Because I don't have any intel. I'm just going by my gut feeling but I think Garrett Nussmeier has been playing hurt. I think he's been playing injured.
He got knee arthritis. He was diagnosed with it, just like Jumper's knee.
Yeah,
that's like the only
tendinitis.
injury that we really heard of. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been something off on him this year. Like I thought that first game of the year against Clemson, it was great, and it's been a steady either flat line or downhill from there. And some of the stuff that I thought were problems last year have started to come back and haunt him, like that, like the pocket presence stuff. Like he keeps his eyes downfield and, his shoulders aligned with the feet, aligned with the eyes. But when he's pressured, everything goes awry. He gets those, just tries to force the ball, play hero ball, like sees things that really aren't there and thinks that he can do things that he really can't. So the turnover worthy passes, and turnover worthy plays just, have started to increase again. You already said like not the most athletic guy. So, the mobility and the off platform stuff is limited, especially since he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world. But, all the other stuff from the shoulders up, I love, when the LSU offense is moving and humming and it's in rhythm, like it looks like a really, really, high end, Division I SEC offense, and he's the catalyst of that. I think right now he's my QB5 in the class. Okay, the big three are the big three. I also have Darian Mensah in there, and there's a chance that Mensah and Moore both return. So that would leave for me. I guess there's a chance that Simpson and Mendoza could return, although I think both of them will come out. But there's a chance for me that he might be the next quarterback off the board. I could see a team, trusting what he offers from a football IQ and leadership ability and rolling the dice and taking him late first round, early second round, and really trying to develop him as their quarterback. I think he can do it. I don't have a first round grade on him. And I think that the next couple weeks are going to be very, very, very vital to how he, and the next couple weeks of playing. And then during the All-Star circuit, it's going to be, it's really important for him because I think that the scouts are all over the board on a guy like Nussmeier. Like, he's not the traitsy guy. That's Lenora Sellers, right? Lenora Sellers got the physical traits that people, that a lot of teams covet. He's got the different kind of traits, right? He's got that head smart, like knows how to play the position, And I think for some reason we all, go goo goo and gaga for the big arms and the big muscles and 6'4", 240 running like Mack trucks, but we forget about the guys who know how to play quarterback. I've heard Kirk Cousins as a comp for him. I even think, like, and again, I'm a Jets fan here. I think it's more Chad Pennington with a better arm. And, if you guys, maybe you're not young, and maybe you guys are too young to remember Chad Pennington. I know Jim does. Chad Pennington was a phenomenal quarterback. He had a popcorn arm.
Me old?
Yeah, he had a popcorn arm, but he was a phenomenal quarterback, right?
I got to see Chad Pennington coach this year, actually. He's a high school coach now here in Kentucky.
Oh, yeah?
Crazy. Yeah, he coaches a 1A team in Kentucky now.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my thing on Nussmeier. Like, again, I happen to like him a lot more than others. I know, and the reviews are all over the board on him, but there's just something that he to me exudes quarterback at the next level.
See, and Dom, that to me describes an NFL starter. You just may not want to hand the keys over to him week one of his rookie year. But Chad Pennington started a lot of games for the Jets and the Dolphins.
He sure did. And if it wasn't for two, torn rotator cuff and labrums, like, his career would have lasted a lot longer. So.
And refresh my memory, but Chad Pennington was the quarterback that got cut when Brett Favre signed with the Jets, right?
He was released. I mean, his contract was done, so he was released, and he signed with Miami at that point. Yeah,
got it.
But that was after the second shoulder surgery. No, I mean, the ship had sailed.
I love that comp, though. I love that comp. So, Hank, where are you on Garrett Nussmeier from LSU?
Yeah, probably couldn't be more opposite. I think I have a round 5 grade on him right now. That's based on everything that's not to do with interviews or how he is as a person. I've never met the guy. Sure. Again, I think it's very likely he goes a lot higher than round 5 just because, NFL father, he's got NFL mindset, he's got NFL this, NFL that. I will say good anticipation. He's aware in the pocket. I think that he works the middle of the field well. He has good timing. He's a good processor. And these are all very positive things. But it's the size, the arthritis that's going to have to be monitored throughout his career now, the inability to be an athlete when he needs to be. I think he's down there with some of the more slow and more statue guys in this class. I think that he has some bad overthrows at times. And I am on the complete opposite end of the spectrum with the arm strength. I'm not that high on it. I think that he needs to play, and I'll probably say the same thing next week with Drew Aller. My favorite quote is, Drew Aller plays how Garrett Nussmeier should, and Garrett Nussmeier plays how Drew Aller should. Because I don't think Nussmeier has the arm to fit it in these windows that he's trying to fit it in. So I'm lower on the arm strength. Being a fifth-year player, but also being kind of inexperienced is also a little bit weird to me, and especially at the SEC level. But it's not the end of the world for me. I don't mind guys who are inexperienced. I have 2 first-year starters at the top of my board, and of course the benching this last week is just feels like the cherry on top. I don't know. He's got to keep starting for LSU. Michael Van Buren's not going to win them games. Nussmeier, at least can go out there and win you some games, but it's just been a very bad decline for Nussmeier that I didn't expect, but I was also never the highest on him in general. I do agree. I think from the shoulders up, you have an NFL guy who could go in and start right away, but everything else I'm just very skeptical about.
Yeah, and I will push back on one thing, Hank. It's not to say I'm right, you're wrong, or anything like that. Just for conversation point, I mean, when it's all said and done, he's going to have over 20, close to 25 starts. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much more experience and in this day and age you can hope for, unless the guy's Bo Nix playing at 3 different colleges and have 60 some odd starts. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
there was a draft professor that did some research. And I don't know if it was a month ago or if it was over the summer, on the number of starts and what their number of starts in college versus NFL success rate. And I want to say the over-under on that number was like 32 or 35. Like when you have like 32 or 35 starts, that evaluation tended to have less deviation at the NFL level. Right. But Daniel, you haven't weighed in on Nussmeier yet. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a guy I didn't have that high coming in with summer scouting, so I don't think he's fallen too much. But I have a question that I want to bring up. I've done some research. People are saying this guy might have like a 4.8 40 time, which I don't think is accurate. I that's just what I'm seeing. I know I'm probably
I'd be
totally
shocked if
wrong.
he ran. I'd be
I mean,
shocked if he
either.
did any
Yeah.
combine
Me
drills.
too. Me too. But people are saying this guy's like a better athlete than I think he is. But that's just a thing that I've come across. Just some reports saying they like his athleticism. I'm like, I didn't think that would be really as a plus in his scouting report. But with him having an NFL, a dad, and a guy that's been in the league and it's still in the league, and as an exec, he knows how the NFL works. That's going to be a plus in the process, right? He knows how offseason works. He knows how the preseason is going to work. He knows really what to expect. And I think his dad's going to do his best, as a father and a guy who's trying to get somebody ready for the league in that aspect, because as a quarterback, if you know it's coming around the corner, as the little things, it's going to help you out because you're playing the most cerebral position there is.
Mhm.
But when you're not a crazy good athlete, it's why I kind of brought it up. You kind of have to be the best in 1% in that cerebral stuff, in the quarterback intangibles, which I think that's some of his biggest struggles. When you're a young quarterback or an NFL quarterback in general, defenses are going to try to disguise what they're throwing at you. They're just going to try all the kind of looks at you, and that's what he struggles with the most. So the things that he struggles with the most is what you really need to be successful at the quarterback position. But like you said, character's going to come into the point. That's going to be a plus. Bloodlines plus. But biggest red flags with me is if you're going to be playing for the same school, a big school with a lot of resources, you're going to have to show me some wins and some big wins. What is he doesn't really just won anything. I know Brian Kelly's he's not a world beater and he's out the door, but we want to see, if we're not going to have a lot of starts, okay, we want to see big wins. So I think right now it's more of a gamble. Every quarterback's a gamble, but he's going to get drafted off what he could be, not of what we've already seen.
Yep. And like I said, to end it with Nussmeier, I think he's kind of one of those higher floor, selections that teams like to have on their team, right? He's a guy who might be able to step in and play earlier than some of the other guys that we've talked about over the past couple weeks, because he's older, he's experienced, he's got it mechanically. I think he's sound. He might not, he might not overwhelm you with his, athletic prowess or his physical stature, that's for sure. But I think at some point you just have to, trust on a guy that knows how to play the position, right? And I think Nussmeier knows how to play the position. Is he perfect? He's not perfect. There's a lot of stuff he needs to clean up. And I think if he does it, I think he's got a chance to be a starter in this league.
Okay. So we have covered what? This was our third or fourth podcast on quarterbacks. I've already lost track.
Third. Yes, sir.
This was our third. So we've covered 9. We have 6 more that we were planning on covering. Next week, we're going to do Drew Aguilar, Carson Beck, and Jalen Daniels. And then the final week will be Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, and Ty Simpson. So these shows definitely get a lot of reruns. I can definitely tell that people are looking for content on the quarterbacks in this class. So I definitely appreciate the efforts all 3 of you are putting in to look at the tape and come in on Mondays, start the week off strong with quarterbacks. And if you want more on quarterbacks, if you're watching this, there is a quarterback playlist on the Draft Professor YouTube channel. There are 2 podcasts on quarterbacks, and the 2 podcasts, ironically, are not covering the same players. So I think other than Cole Payton, that's the only overlap between this podcast and the other one is to the quarterbacks that have been covered so far. So why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Hank, do you want to let everybody watching know how to find all of your content and all of your Cole Payton propaganda?
Yeah, just Hank Knows Ball on Substack and Twitter is where you'll find it all. So that's really it.
Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel, I'm one half of Home Squad Sports along with Dalton, who you'll see on the 9 o'clock slot. We cover college football on a week-to-week basis and high school recruiting as well. High school recruiting is really starting to heat up for us. Got a lot of quarterback tape to watch. But, yeah, do top 6 games, player of the week each week, and pretty much just top to bottom. And we got Will Thomas, draft professor. He's going to be joining us on Wednesdays for the rest of the season for a couple minutes just to talk about some SEC ball. So good guy to follow there. Yeah, you can follow us at Home Squad Sports. We're just ready to see how this college football season ends. I know it's going to be crazy.
And Dom.
Oh man, I'm all over the place these days, but you can always catch me mostly active on Twitter at DC_NYJets for all my draft materials and scouting reports and evals for by the time April comes, I should have, in-depth evals for at least, 150 of the prospects. You can find them all at Jets X Factor, www.jetxfactor.com. Also you can find the links on Twitter for that. Or Project Prospect with Dom C, which is my little podcast that I usually run from November through May, talking just NFL draft and NFL prospects 365. Hope to have you wonderful gentlemen on the pod sometime to break some bread and shoot the shit.
Would love to.
Yeah.
So welcome to Draft Professor, everybody. If you could take a moment and go to @NFL Draft Fanatic on YouTube and hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified of daily draft podcasts. So every day at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, plus Saturdays at 10 a.m., plus Sundays at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., we are doing podcasts really similar to this. The only thing that changes is what position we're covering. So the goal of the channel is to podcast on every player drafted in rounds 1 through 5. So we'll, group the players up and discuss them backstage, and then we'll podcast. Quarterbacks, we do 3 or 4 per show. Most other positions, we do about 8 players per show. So for Dom, Hank, Daniel, myself, for the 110 people to Draft Professor, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you on a podcast again at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody.